welcome to the Hamilton Cast Read-Alongs, sponsored by the Gilder Lehrman Institute. Hi everyone, I'm your narrator, Keisha Rembert, and I'm a teacher, a learner, a lover of history and all things books, and I'm joining you from the Windy City. Do you know where that is? Right, Chicago, and I'm happy that you are joining us wherever you are. Our read-alongs feature Hamilton cast members reading picture books and discussing the history behind them. Our goal each week is to give you, students, an educational and literary experience with members of the theater community. It's an interactive way to hear your favorite stories or to be introduced to new stories that you may not know. I encourage you to go to gilderlehrman.org to learn all about what Gilder Lehrman has to offer. If you're a Hamilton fan, and I'm sure that you are, you can register for EduHam online by going to hamilton.gilderlehrman.org. Now, let's learn about today's storyteller. This week's storyteller is Daniel Yearwood. Daniel was born and raised in New York City with a love of music and science. He attended the Bronx High School of Science, where he desired to pursue biomedical engineering. That sounds a little different than where he ended up, but then he shifted to his true passion for the theater. In 2017, he graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Musical Theater from Pace University, and has since worked on shows such as Newsies and Once on This Island, and your favorite musical, Hamilton. He says, never give up. Go over, go around, go through, but never, ever give up. Welcome, Daniel. I love that message.
Hello. How you doing today, Keisha?
I am awesome. How about yourself?
I'm really well. I am in Houston for the weekend, participating in a junior theater festival, bringing lots of joy and encouragement to students around the country who love to do what I do today. So I'm glad that I get to be an example and an encouragement to so many students who have this passion, and I'm excited to see what the rest of the weekend holds. But for today,
I know.
Let's go.
Yes, it's kids all around. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I'm excited for students to hear this book. It gives them two familiar people, but really in a different way. So the book students that we're reading today is Martin and Anne, the Kindred Spirits of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Anne Frank. It is written by Nancy Churin and Yevgenia Nayberg, who illustrated. She's an award-winning illustrator, students. So this book is about Anne Frank and Martin Luther King Jr., who were both born in the same year, 1929. That's interesting. That's the year my grandmother was born. And although they were born in the same year, they were born worlds apart. But both faced ugly prejudices and violence. Both answered back with words of love and faith in humanity. And that had to be hard for both of them because they saw some pretty difficult things. But this story is of their parallel journeys to find hope in darkness and to follow their dreams. Thank you, Daniel. Let's read.
So now that we have the title of the book and the authors read aloud, I'd really just like to read the dedication at the beginning of the book. For those whose lives were cut short everywhere, including Bialystok, June 27th, 1941. Your memory is a blessing. Love lives on. That's from Nancy Churin and from Yevgenia Nayberg. To my parents. In 1929, two babies were born on opposite sides of the ocean. They never met. They didn't even speak the same language, but their hearts beat with the same hope. On January 15th, Martin's father, mother, and older sister beamed at their beautiful baby in Atlanta, Georgia. On June 12th, Anne's father, mother, and older sister cooed at their beautiful baby in Frankfurt, Germany. But not everyone thought Martin and Anne were beautiful. When Martin was old enough to go to school, he had to go to a different one than his best friend because his skin was dark. Even worse, his friend stopped playing with him. Martin's skin hadn't changed, but suddenly his friend cared when he hadn't before. That made no sense. When Anne was ready for school, Adolf Hitler, the leader of the Nazi Party, was elected to lead Germany. Jewish children like Anne were no longer allowed in public schools. Anne's family fled Germany for Holland, but when Hitler invaded Holland, anti-Jewish laws followed. Anne's school closed its doors to her. Suddenly, her friends didn't want to play with her anymore. Everywhere Martin went, he saw signs that said whites only. He wasn't welcome in public parks, swimming pools, or restaurants. Martin didn't think that was fair. Everywhere Anne went, she had to wear a yellow star of David that let people know she was Jewish. She couldn't buy ice cream or go to a movie. And every day, more signs blared. No Jews allowed. Her father couldn't sell to non-Jewish customers. Nazis burned books by Jewish authors.
Students, that's a lot of things that Martin and Anne couldn't do. Martin and Anne both experienced extreme prejudice and discrimination. And people believed and prejudged them, and that's what prejudice is, students, prejudgment, prejudged them because of their race for Martin and their religion for Anne. Because of this prejudgment, people carried out actions, which is what discrimination is, that separated them from larger society and risked their safety. In the American South, that looked like laws and practices to separate, disempower, and take away the humanity of Black people. And in Europe, specifically Germany, this first happened in the form of identifying, separating, disempowering, and taking away the humanity of Jewish people. Let's read to see what happens next to both Martin and Anne.
When Martin was 13, he won a speech competition talking about Black and white children playing together in harmony. He wondered if the right words could one day change unfair laws. When Anne was 13, she got a diary for her birthday. She was happy she could share her most private thoughts with Kitty, the name she gave her journal. But soon after she began writing, Jews were rounded up and sent to death camps. Anne and her family hid in the attic over her father's business. They had to be very quiet. They couldn't go outside. Trapped in the attic, Anne described how beautiful the world outside was, how light could brighten the deepest darkness. Martin finished high school at 15. Most colleges were for whites only, so he went to Morehouse College, a school for Black students. There, he learned about the Indian leader Mahatma Gandhi and how he won rights for his people using peaceful protests. Could the same thing work in America? Martin decided to become a minister who would lead his people to stand up for justice. Anne, hidden in the attic, continued her studies as best she could. And every day, she wrote in her diary about her dreams for a better world. Even with all the hate around her, Anne believed that people were really good at heart. When Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her bus seat to a white man, Martin, now a minister, organized protest marches. He gave speeches. He told people not to ride the buses until everyone was treated fairly. Martin shared his dream of a world where all were truly considered equal. His words gave people courage and strength. And while Martin grew older, Anne's 15th year was her last. The Nazis stormed Anne's hiding place. They arrested her family and the friends hiding with them. Anne's diary was left behind, pages scattering on the floor of the dusty attic. But she still believed in the power of simple acts of kindness.
Students, I'm so impressed that their words live on. Anne Frank had been in hiding with her family for 761 days. 761 days. It's a really long time. And because of her well-kept, detailed journal, we know what life in hiding was like for Jewish people trying to escape death. She was a historian, as was Dr. King, documenting history. And Anne showed us all her world, her fears, her hopes for a world without hate. And Dr. King did the same. In her last diary entry, Anne Frank spoke about herself as a bundle of contradictions. And that's differences, students, as you probably can relate to. I know I'm a bundle of contradictions. What about you, Daniel? Are you a bundle of contradictions?
I am a bundle and a bunch more. No, it's amazing to come into my young adulthood and see where I started, how I was, raised, even from birth. I come from a family full of lawyers and scientists, and I'll never forget there was a story when my mom, she gave birth to me. I was a tiny baby, and they went to take the first picture of me, and I reached out and wanted to say hi to the camera, and the nurse was like, "That's not normal, but your baby's normal." And that's when my mom knew. At the beginning of life, in my young childhood, I was very math and science oriented, although I loved music. I loved to play the drums. And I had to figure out what it is that I truly wanted. And at the end of the day, as I started to grow up, especially through my high school years, it was less about what I wanted to do versus how I saw the world around me and how I could make the world a better place. We look out our windows, we open our eyes every morning, and we see what the world not only has to offer, but what it can take. And how more often than not, it will try to force you to conform to whatever it is that society says is right or what's in. And what's in is not always what's right. And that's what Anne and Martin understood so deeply. There were societal norms that kept people marginalized, kept them oppressed, kept them in a place where we aren't equal. We all run the human race together. And sometimes it's better that we realize that the race is miles long. There's room enough for all of us to run it, rather than trying to squeeze societal norms and say, this is the way you must run it, with blinders on. And the moment those blinders were taken off, I started to realize my contradictions weren't a negative thing. They were aspects of me that made me multifaceted, which means that I was capable of doing exceedingly and abundantly more than what I would have been able to do had I tried to force myself into this one lane view of how I need to live my life. And so in most ways, they're a blessing rather than a burden.
Yes, more than you can ask or think. I love that you talk about this idea of conformity, because Martin and Anne didn't conform. Even in times where they were highly oppressed and their lives were in danger, they didn't conform. They allowed that light and that hope and that love to shine through them. And as a result, we get to experience that. So I can't wait to see how this story unfolds, and see the comparisons between the two.
Martin won the Nobel Peace Prize when he was 35. He worked with President Lyndon Johnson to help pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964. At last, those ugly whites-only signs were against the law. Only a few weeks before the concentration camp was liberated, Anne died along with her older sister. She would have been amazed that her diary, rescued by a family friend, became a bestseller. Her father, the only one in her family to survive the camps, had her book published. Actors performed her words on stage and film. The cramped rooms where she hid in Amsterdam became a museum dedicated to speaking out against hate. When Martin was 39, he was shot and killed by a man who didn't believe Black people deserved the same rights as white people. But no one could kill the way Martin inspired others. Just as Anne's words will never die. Martin and Anne were born in different places, but they both dreamed that one day all babies would be seen as beautiful, as all babies are. Love is stronger than hate. Kindness can heal the world.
Kindness can heal the world.
Yes.
What a beautiful way to end that story of two people who I never would have, who are great individuals, but who I never would have put their stories together so wonderfully as this author does. And their words are so powerful that they last, that they stick with us. I know you want to share part of your light and your gift and other words with us, so I'm excited to hear.
All right. If it's magic, then why can't it be everlasting? Like the sun that always shines, like the poets in this rhyme, like the galaxies in time. If it's pleasing, then why can't it be never leaving? Like the day that never fails, like on seashores there are shells, like the time that always tells. It holds the key to every heart around the universe. It fills you up without and quenches every thirst. So if it's special, then with it why aren't we as careful? It's making sure we dress in style, posing pictures with a smile, keeping danger from a child. It holds the key to every heart throughout the universe. It fills you up without bite and quenches every thirst. If it's magic, why can't we make it everlasting? Like the lifetime of the sun, it will leave your heart undone. For there's enough for everyone.
Daniel, can you tell us about that song and why you chose it?
Absolutely. So this song is by Stevie Wonder. It's called If It's Magic, and it is from the album Songs in the Key of Life. And after I read this book, not only did this song resonate, but the fact that that's the title of the album. And thankfully, there were no lyrics or him singing on it, so there's no copyright infringement. But I am going to promote and say you should listen to this album because it is a wide range of experiences and stories about everything we all go through and the things that we feel as humans, things that connect us rather than show our differences. And this song, If It's Magic, ironically, the feeling of love sometimes can feel fleeting. It feels like it's there one moment and very much gone the next. How do we find a way to be able to love each other consistently and strongly to the point where it doesn't fleet, it doesn't waver? And how do we not become magicians who like to fool others, but use our magic for good? To be able to bring love and light into the world, because there is enough for everyone. And kindness is not only infectious in a positive way, but kindness is what can heal all wounds. So that's why I love that song and why I chose it today.
Wow, that's Well, I think you've just sold some more of Stevie's music. And students,
I
you might not
asked
be.
him, but it's just because I love the brother. I love him.
I know. I'm not sure. Like I grew up listening to Stevie Wonder, and students, if you haven't heard Stevie Wonder, like he might not be the music you used to listen to, but I highly encourage you to go and listen to Stevie.
If you've ever heard the version of Happy Birthday that isn't the Happy Birthday to you, if you were the Happy Birthday to you, hey, Happy Birthday to you, that is Stevie. That right there is Stevie.
Yeah.
And a plethora of other things, but that is Stevie. So just to give you an idea.
And students, if you have not even heard that version, that's the new version that you should always sing every time.
Uh-huh. And clap on 2 and 4.
Exactly. I love it. Well, thank you for introducing us to that song and making that personal connection with the book. And when it ends, that the words are so potent and powerful, it leaves students with just this message of hope that love is stronger than hate. Kindness can heal the world. It's just really the sum of who Martin and Anne Frank were. Do you agree with those words? And what do they mean to you? And how can students apply that in their lives today?
Absolutely. I agree with every sentiment there. That reality that love, when spread around, it is truly overpowering any and all other form of feeling. It conquers hate. When you love, there's no room for hate.
Yep.
And when you are kind, ultimately, it's not about being kind so that you get it back. But when you're kind, you heal others, and in turn, there will always be someone who leans on you or leans to you for kindness. Now I'm thinking about it. I could have done "Stand By Me," uh, or "I'll Be There," because there are so many different songs, and there are so many words by Martin and Anne that are reflected in the arts, where we really get to see and show each other, hey, this is how life can be when we're there for one another, when we're kind to one another. It just makes the world a better place. It's a tried and tested reality. If you look historically, when there is love, there is more often peace, there is joy, there is blessings, and there's just an abundance of kindness and peace. And I'm redundant now because my thoughts.
I think love is this communal thing, and I love that this book really brings that communal aspect of love together, right? So through this story of Martin, through this story of Anne, these two people that never met, but that we brought their words and their lives together, is to me an illustration of love being stronger than hate. So that's so cool.
Those connections can happen all over the world.
Absolutely.
And when someone feels love on one part of the world, another part of the world, they're experiencing the same thing and be going through the same thing, but both were going through oppressive, very sad, distraught situations in their own right. But we're loving to the point where they both had an optimistic look and a hopeful look on what could be in a time where everything, like the book says, it seemed so dark for both of them. It sheds light on the positivity, on the optimism that we can approach life with.
Do you think you would have been as optimistic had you been in those circumstances?
Hard to say. I think because of the way I grew up, and I'm very grateful for my family, that there would have been enough love being shared my way to help lift me, which even in the illustrations, you're able to see that that is what Martin and Anne were surrounded by. Because they had love around them, they were able to see the world in a way where the circumstances might not be what we want them to be, but we can change them as long as we keep loving. And
yeah, there's a power in that.
I believe I would have been able to do it. I would have been able to do it.
Yeah.
I have confidence.
I believe you, Daniel, that you would.
I got confidence. I'd have been able to do it.
And I still think that there are opportunities for us today to demonstrate that. While the world has changed so much, there are certain things about the world that hasn't changed all that much. And so students, you have the opportunity to demonstrate that love and to find the commonality rather than to focus on the differences. One of the things that I love, Daniel, about this book is that it kind of bridges those two worlds. And I'm going to show a page that I think does it really well. So like some of the pictures kind of merge the story. So you almost feel like Martin is walking into Anne's world and Anne is walking into Martin's world. Had you thought about their similarities before, or did anything in the book kind of surprise you that their worlds were so, I won't say connected, but connected really?
Yeah, no, it really is this thing of polar opposites, and yet couldn't be more magnetically the same. Even just looking at this page that you showed, the parallels of both having to deal with these signs that are ostracizing or isolating them. And you ever have a friend that something's going wrong and you look at them and you both know something is wrong, but you can't say nothing about it? That is literally what's happening on this page. Like, it looks like Martin and Anne are going, is this right? The answer is no.
Yep.
But you could feel that in the way the story is told, that they both knew. They didn't know each other, but they both knew that their circumstances weren't what they were supposed to be. And that they did know what the right thing was. And because they knew that, they were able to move forward and continue to live with that love and hope. I mean, the illustrations are brilliant. If I may.
Yes, please.
I think I'm kind of jumping you to the gun because I think this was the next one we were going to guess.
I really love that. So that's like one of my favorite illustrations. And I don't know, it just draws me in.
Because we are all lovers of Hamilton here, there is something about this illustration that reminds me of the show. If you ever watch the show again on Disney Plus, here's a hot tip. The lighting in that show is impeccable, but it tells a lot of the story. Anytime Hamilton is dealing with a personal part of his own life, a vulnerable aspect of his life, there is a blue undertone, there are blue backlights. You can see the stage with a blue hue. And anytime he was moving towards political and or any sort of movement he was trying to get the country to advance with, always yellow. So even the lighting of these pages, these pamphlets, Hamilton wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. His words are what propelled him and this country forward. And Martin and Anne, almost 200 years later, were also changing the world with their words and how much they wrote, how much they spoke out and about those issues that were still affecting the world in a negative way. They were trying to change and bring a sense of love and peace to the world that so many of us hadn't yet either opened our eyes to or were willing to accept as a possibility. And that's kind of what's interesting about all of the darkness surrounding this one area of light.
Yeah.
Because it's there.
And it's funneling us into that light, right? So
yes,
there is no other path but to that light.
No. I mean, there are other paths that you could take.
But you'd be in the darkness.
Exactly. And it's what we should strive for.
Yeah.
You know, we could see that light.
Absolutely. It's interesting that when your mom saw you, you like beamed for the camera and you were like, a star is born, right? So thinking about you personally, what have you used? So Martin and Anne have used their voice and used their words to inspire this hope. What do you hope your words and your actions bring to the world?
Honestly, I just want to be as much of an instrument of love and care to the world in a world that can feel so dark and feel so hateful or spiteful. Optimism, positivity is sometimes as fleeting as love. But I write quite a bit, I journal, and I have relationships with family and friends that continue to uplift me so that I can then uplift others. I think that is the blessing of being a human on this planet, is that innately, we are very selfish humans. That is how we're born. But we have a higher consciousness. We are not basic animals. We do not need to do everything from a sense of fight or flight. I must get this for myself. We are able to see and understand and sympathize, empathize with others. And because of that, there is no reason for why that should be unnoticed or, you know, disregarded. We should see one another for who we are, whether someone is showing you their full and complete self or not. Acknowledge the fact that there's a human in front of you, that there is someone who's going through their own scenario, their own circumstances. And if they're met with love, by default, their day, their life, it gets a little brighter. It may not be, the most light that will illuminate all of the things, but just a little bit of light goes a long way. And that's what I hope that my words, my actions, how I live can bring hope and joy into the world.
Well, thank you for sharing your light with us today. We really appreciate it. You taught us some music. You taught us some more about two amazing people whose words still resound with us this day. Students, we hope that you will share your stories with us. If you grab that activity sheet and fill it in and email it to hamilton@gilderlehrman.org or share it with us on social media. We'd love to see and hear your own thoughts about what we have in common and the courage and hope that the words of Martin and Anne inspired in you. Thank you so much, students. And Daniel, thanks again.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy, and I hope to see y'all soon. Enjoy the rest of your summers. Bye.
Bye, students.